So I finished Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth, and yeah, it was kind of worth it even though there's a couple parts I really didn't like, and I'll eventually get to it. Also, I'm not really going to avoid spoilers this time around, so fuck it. I'm giving this overall an 8, but it's pretty hard to actually score it. Some will score it individually, which I'd give like Mask of Deception maybe a high 6, and Mask of Truth, which I'm still not sure why they called it that when it's closer to like, oh, the two white emperors or two white gods or whatever, but whatever. I'm giving that like a high 8. And then there's others that scored altogether, which is what I did, but people score differently depending on that as well. So it's like, oh, some did have a huge impact in it. Was the payoff amazing? Okay, even though all this other crap in the middle sucked ass, nah, it's a 9. And I'm like, no, all these other parts still mattered. Sure, will I rate it lower if your ending sucked ass and everything else is great, then just like, oh, everything was okay and an amazing ending? Yeah, but if some of the stuff that's halfway through is like, well, this is ass, right? And I'm like, yeah, the payoff was great, but I still remember all this other crap in there. And even then, it's like, technically Prelude to Fallen is still useful for this one, so do you count all three then? My main gripe is on Mask of Deception, where I feel that a lot of these characters are more one-note and tropey than the original one from like 2002, or maybe the 2006 version, which I think is the PS2 version, since he added a lot of stuff in the end. It's like, oh, there's new voices, there's new characters and all that, so just to be fair, let's say it's a 2006 version. And it's not just one or two glaring examples, it's kind of crazy how whatever most of these characters in your party are in Deception, right? It's mostly that there's a lot of these intermediary scenes between the plot that feels like they're just being repeated over and over. I don't need 5 scenes to know that Atui likes drinking and fighting and guys, I get it, you only need like 1 or 2, it's fine. The amount of scenes that consist of Kuon just doing slapstick comedy was kind of absurd. And this leads to one of the differences between the original, which is Prelude to the Fallen, and this one, and that's that the comedic relief is now mainly focused on the main character Haku. In the OG, the list of people that weren't the butt of the joke was smaller than who was. In the second, it's like 10% calling Kiryu a pussy, and the other 10% was like, oh, Nosuri is inept at everything without her brother, right? And the rest is just shitting on Haku in different areas, but usually ends up with Kuon trying to break his head with her tail. And it's really weird because throughout the VN, like, yes, he's lazy, he wants to cop out and just do the bare minimum. But everybody's like, oh man, he's so smart, he always figures things out and gets us all alive. And then they shit on him again in the other scenes, like, what the is he cool? Do you like him or do you not like him? It's just weird how it was like that. And it's not like that alone made me dislike some of these characters. They're just kind of unlikable to begin with, or had just anything that I'd see like, oh, that was a positive trait. And it's not like I dislike or I'm indifferent to all of them. There's still quite a few that I do like. I think the Ukon and Maroto combo are great. I think Entoa, or whatever her name was, is pretty cool, even though she had like small screen time. Rutie, or whatever her name was, has more going on than a lot of these other characters in the party. It's like, yeah, she's shy, okay, that's her trope. She also likes cooking, but she also likes gay shit, and she also likes her freaking bird that's huge, and then she has her own thing, which I think they just ignored it in Mask of Truth, where she's kind of like Arudu at that point, just different. It's like, and it's like they're juxtaposed together because Arudu is like very animalistic, and her speech patterns are really basic, and hers is like very refined. It's like, oh shit, there's a lot of things going on, and they just kind of skip it, but whatever, that's for something else. And then there's Mikazuchi and Chinon, who handle comedy better than most of the main cast. I rather lessen the amount of time I have to spend with Atui and Kuon, and just spam more Chinon scenes going around. Like, I'd say the comedic nature of Chinon and Kiryu is much better in the third game than Kuon and Haku are in the second one. But mainly the idea was that like, oh, it's only the first of the 2 pieces and they have to develop. So of course they start out shitty, but not really when, you know, something like Trails in the Sky didn't have to do that. They just became better characters halfway through, but they were still good from the get-go. It just feels kind of a cop-out. Not to mention that a lot of them didn't actually develop, just the worst ones. I don't remember any change to the 3 that I was pretty indifferent to. Ogi and the 2 Chains. And the thing is, I used Ogi a lot in the third one for gameplay wise, but otherwise they're just not around all that much. The antagonists are also just kind of there, just like on Prelude to the Fallen. I kind of want to give this a pass because there's only 17 stages, but on the other hand, having Masnu in as the boss fight for 3 of the 17 stages was kind of lazy. Even though it was funny, it's still fucking lazy, right? Everything felt like a glass canyon. The tactics, if you can even call it that, were just adding these block and evasion scrolls to your character, and that's all you can do because everything fucking dies in 2 hits. Like, you and them always die in 2 hits, and they provide like a huge difficulty spike right at the end where the boss was like 12 levels ahead of or above me. And since only the people that you're fighting with gets the completion XP, and I always rotated my characters to have each one at least decently leveled, right? Only Haku was 12 levels under. Everybody else was like 14. The boss fight suffers from the same massive HP pool from the first one, while being relatively quick and also being able to one-shot. It's like, dude, this is awful. I found it to be the hardest boss fight in the trilogy by far, outside of the extra stuff. Sure, I could have done some free battles and grinded to maybe like, oh, I'll be level 35 and only have like a 7 level difference. There's things I could have done to do better, right? But I didn't need to do this for the other 2 titles, so it's kind of a what the fuck did you do kind of thing. Like, it was to the point where I thought, I was like, wait, did I set it in hard mode or like randomly halfway through? Because it doesn't seem normal that all my characters are dying in 2 hits. And that's funny because none of my characters actually did die, because everything else just died in 2 hits anyway, so it's like, whatever. And the thing is, there's actually really cool fights as well. It's like, there's the one with Kudo, which is freaking great. And the thing is, like, outside of that, a lot of cool shit was happening. There was this whole war with this other country, and it's like, everybody's using their mass powers. Like, oh shit, this is OP. It's like a lot more shit happening in the first one in that kind of degree. Just the main party had nothing to do. Because, yeah, it was like, oh, they didn't develop it. But even then, the third one, a lot of them were like, yeah, you didn't really do much anyway either. It's like, alright, yeah, you're part of the party, it's fine. But none of them were on the level of these pillar generals who were like, oh shit, you put the mask on and now you're like a massive weapon of destruction over here. And then later on you find Kudo, and Kudo's freaking great. It's like, oh, he also kills you in like 2 hits. But it was fun. It's like he's just playing around. He's not even trying. He's still beating the crap out of you. And I think that was like maybe the 1 out of 2 times where I did have like 1 character die. But or whatever. All in all, if they skipped some of the slice of life events or they made them more unique, I'd rate it higher. Like, something that you might be put off on might become a glaring issue if it's done repeatedly, and that's what was happening to me. It just felt more tropey than the original. A lot of the flack I'm giving is mainly that they introduced a lot of these characters that maybe have like 5 lines until Mask of Truth. It would have been nice if they removed some of these gag repetition that I keep talking about, and instead add more story scenes that include half of these pillar generals talking to each other, at least have something. Like, I think Raiko had maybe 3 lines. And like the worst offender, I don't even remember his name. I have to load up the game again. They even made fun in the third one in this extra scene. It's like, wait, what's your name? And it's like, oh, let's go to VNDB, it'll be fast. He's not even in the fucking VNDB page. You're one of the pillar generals. You're so forgettable, no one even knows. Don't even bother putting your name in here. That's how fucking lazy this was. Like, holy shit. I think Deception landed what it had to do, especially on the ending. It landed Haku's development through Deception's plot really well. There's a lot of funny stuff happening, it's just also a lot of repetition. If they released a random what-if game that's based on Haku, Ukon, Mato, and Sakon, right? During just doing random-ass hijinks, I'd buy it immediately. And that's like my main point, where this is a 2-parter and it feels like this is padded out way too much. I think that it took like 30 hours. This should have been like a 10-hour VN. This shouldn't be this long. I don't feel like a lot was happening for it to warrant all this time. Because in the end, I didn't get much out of it. You know, I felt like there was like 8 scenes with Atsui, but what do I remember from her? Oh, she likes drinking, she likes guys, and she likes fighting. So now I'll get to Mask of Truth. I think it's a lot better, and kind of had to be, otherwise we'd all laugh at how the setup to Mask of Truth ended up being better than the actual Mask of Truth, right? It continues from the cliffhanger. The whole dynamic with Nekone and Haku is done well, and it ends up being some of the stronger scenes throughout the whole game. Atsui is still annoying, but she's at least has a couple good scenes here and there now. Nosuri didn't change much, but I'm pretty sure they just brought up the awkwardness from Toka to her. At this point, there's more weirdos than not in the Emekuraga tribe, right? It's kind of funny. Like I said before, most of the characters developed well here, except maybe Ogi and like Junk Walt. But, you know, they're already there, they already developed enough. They were already characters, you know, like Jack Wolf got some kind of expansions in his background. It's like, oh, this is how he knows his own swordsmanship. But you wouldn't say you would further develop from it. It's like, yeah, he's basically the old man of the group. He's done growing like a while ago. Andrew probably shines the most, but that's mainly because I found her annoying as hell and cliche in Mask of Deception. Juan was actually getting somewhere as an interesting character, but then kind of goes back to her old ways in like the last third or so. It's like, oh, you're back to being an annoying slapstick person, right? It's, oh, what the fuck did you do? And it makes sense why that happened, since it's more akin to her feeling at peace, but it would have been nice if the slapstick were just gone. There was really no reason why Budai, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, was in the freaking game. He was already one note in Mask of Deception, and it was just a plot device. Yeah, screen time was short, but I'd rather have a few more scenes with Raiko, since his dynamic with Haku was actually interesting compared to Varai. The main gripe is that Mask of Truth should have been split into 2 parts. A lot of time was spent on the war and it was well done, but the remaining part where it's about Tsuskuru and the last antagonist felt really rushed in comparison. They could have added maybe one more fight with Reiko because their tactics rivalry was actually starting to bud to some kind of weird friendship they had, or some rivalry, right? Where they respected each other more than the normal animosity they were showing in the beginning. So it'd be like, oh, Reiko just laughing, calling Haku like a sneaky fucker or something. It's like, oh, you actually got me here. It'll be funny. But, you know, instead we got variety, some other bullshit. Anyways, they could have ended with the last Reiko fight and then have like another VN, then expand Woshi's character and Tsuskuru all together. Like have another 30 hours. Like I wouldn't mind another 10 hours worth of Tsuskuru events and showing what Woshi's is doing there and his gradual development. Instead he just pops up like, hey, I want the fucking key now. It's like, who? You were foreshadowed here and there, but overall you're just a whiny cunt. A lot of it just felt rushed. And yeah, really that's what it is. Woshi's, or whatever his name is, just an awful ending villain. You got some pretty cool mid-boss fights. You fight Mikazuchi a few times and they were pretty cool about being kind of memey at times and how many times he shows up. It felt like I was playing Kiwami again. And I think they knew as well, because in the last one when he's fighting in your side, he's like, he's doing the Metal Gear Solid meme, was like, hey, kept you waiting. You fight Reiko, and even though I think it could have been done better, I can see why they did it the way that they did, because like, well, you already had your tactics picks boss battles with Maro, so I was like, yeah, you can have more of them. The boss also changes to a more powered up version if you kill a support first. I thought that was pretty cool, although I still found them a lot more fair to go against than Varai from Mask Conception. So you get all these, and then you get Woshi's, this whiny cunt, and you'd think he'd be cooler with all the behind scenes like I said before, but no, it's like, oh fuck, and then you just fight his fucking minions 4 times in a row or 5 times in a row, and it's fucking annoying. The tactics never change aside from the last piece, and even that one was awful because it just huge stat boosts. Like, well, you're annoying me now, this is not even fun. One thing I forgot to mention is that the difficulty is kind of skewed. It's relatively easy, but there's some set pieces where your units are just bad spots and it fucks you over. Like the fight with Cheese or Shisu, whatever her name is rather easy once she gets cursed, but you can't have a unit with curse near her, so you have to tank or run away towards your cursing unit. And it's to the point where a lot of the major fights is just about cursing the boss. Otherwise, someone like Mikazuchi has so much free reign that it becomes a nightmare. Not that I'm complaining, actually having some kind of tactics needed to actually beat some of these bosses, like attack down, defense down, speed down, all these debuffs, especially curse, and that turn order pushback was something lacking in these games until now. Sure, I think the second one had that one as well, but you just never needed it really, aside from the last boss. It's just that it's usually the same solution. You never really have to think more than what you're already doing. For Battle 5 to Battle 20, it's always the same. Also, the fights where your units can use the power of their masks are just as uninteresting as it was in Prelude to the Fallen. I was kind of hoping they'd have some cool shit, but I also don't really know what they could even add without making your support party in the backlines actually be anything else except of like liabilities. Like, it's pretty funny that Mikazuchi is a much larger threat as his normal self than when he's transforming. The last boss was also kind of weird. It's like a homage to the original but done better and worse at the same time. Like the farewell monologue was done before the fight. The scene is great, it makes sense, and it flows perfectly to the finale. The issue is that this is a way better scene than the actual finale scene before the epilogue, but that might be me. Maybe those who really like Kuwan will enjoy those scenes more, but I doubt it. Mainly because while Kuwan is the main love interest, the plot just revolves around Haku. Part of it is because everybody has more balanced screen time compared to Prelude to Fallen, where yeah, everybody was around, but Eru was always the main point. Like, to the point that Nekone and Kiryu sections in this farewell scene was way better than Kuwan's part. During the fight, they added this cool event where one of your guys comes back, but he starts at level 1, and you have to level 1 because he gains all these passes that are pretty much necessary to beat the fight. But at the same time, they start the fight with Carola that just kill off the level 1 character. She's like the glass canyon from the first game. Like, why would you choose this one for the first? You couldn't use the archers or something? You couldn't use Ereru and Areru, which should probably be the better cases for it. The party speeches during the combos and the final strikes are also anywhere near as emotional compared to the ones in Prelude to Fallen as well. In short, this had way better mechanics, but I didn't get the same impact at all as it was in the original. So all in all, if Mask of Truth was cut right after the war, I'd give it a high 9. or if they redid the whole Woshi section and expanded the two screw section, I might have given this a 10, mainly because the finale hits hard and the faults will be gone alongside giving the old gang their own happy ending. Because that's like the main crux of it, where I know a lot of people, it's like, oh, this is 10 because it's a huge emotional moment. It's like, yeah, that was a great moment, but look at all this other shit that was on the back. It's like, no, just ignore that. It's like, no, I can't ignore it. And that's why this is just an 8. It's a really good 8. I recommend anybody reading this. This is one of the best fans you can read, right? But it has issues. That's why something like I have Symphonic Rain, where yeah, it doesn't have the highest highs like some of these things, but I had no complaints throughout the whole run. It was crazy. The slice of life scenes are a lot better, especially the ones before Kwan comes back. The scenes with the mom are some of the best in the series. The chemistry with the characters are a lot better since there's a lot more stuff going on instead of just 20 scenes of making fun of Haku in different ways. Rutie, or however you pronounce it, got kind of screwed over in a way since it was hinted that she was like Araru, but nothing really happened with that. The rest of her scenes were still good, but I want more of what I was thinking or what they were foreshadowing, and nothing happened with that, right? Mono was still delayed, and there was a great amount of focus on him, even though the logic behind it is pretty questionable because, you know, a couple more lines and he'd just be in your team the whole time. So whatever. But yeah, he was a plot device at that point, so whatever, right? It's mainly that, let's say the plot point of like 70% to 90%, which is basically what after the war, it just felt really rushed. Most of the two crew members felt rushed to the point that I found that Deception did it better, or at least for Kudo. I'm assuming they just wanted to keep it under the 50 hours. Really, the time sink is in post-game. A lot of it is hilarious, but the last couple were kind of annoying. I cheated in the BP because I wasn't going to spend like 20 hours for farming. Fuck that. I hate that kind of padding. But yeah, otherwise, I had a lot of fun with this one. I don't know why the second game is higher ranked than the third one. Maybe it's because of this rush point, but I think they had a lot more complaints on the second one than the third one as well, so I don't know. I might be missing something, or maybe it's just something I don't get. Or maybe I'm just too old. On a side note, there's no mention on Sakuya and Kuya anywhere in these two titles from what I remember, and that's kind of fucked up because those two were interesting for the first one.